council meeting of Monday, May 24th. The roll call, please.
Mayor Martini?
Here.
City Clerk Brooks? Present. Council members Ratty? Here. Salerno?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Kerrigan? Here. Schmidt?
Here.
City Manager Carey?
Here.
City Attorney Adams?
Here.
All present?
Okay, now if you'd all stand for the invocation, we have with us today Pastor Barb West with the Sparks Church of Nazarene. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you, Gene. I wanted to read something to you from the Bible. It says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Would you join me in prayer, please? Heavenly Father, we just come to you right now and ask that you would allow us to walk humbly. Lord, you know all of the things that are on the agenda for the Sparks Council today. And you know all of the things that are coming up in the city and all of the great plans that are being made and all of the people that are rerunning or just running for elected offices. You know all of that. And so today we just ask you to bless Mayor Martini and all of this fine council with your special blessings and enable them to have wisdom to know how to go about the business for the people of this great city of Sparks. We thank you for all of the projects that we see going on and for the money to accomplish those projects. We thank you that we live in this great country called the United States of America, where we have the freedom to make these choices. So we ask a blessing over these elected officials, that today would be the day that they would make the right choices for us who live here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor West. I appreciate that. If you'd remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Schmidt, would you lead us, please?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is comments from the public. Anyone in the audience like to speak on comments of the public? Have no cards? Okay, we'll move on. Approval of the agenda. Anybody want to take anything out of order? Oops. Mr. Smith.
Move to approve.
Mr. Salerno, I wasn't there yet. Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Salerno to approve the agenda as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Next is recommendation to approve minutes of the regular meeting of May 10th, 2010. Any additions or corrections? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Salerno.
Move to approve.
Do you have a second? Ms. Ratty.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Salerno, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve the minutes of May 10th. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Next, we have announcements, presentations, recognition items of special interest proclamation, Arbor Day. Ms. Ratty, you want to read this scene? You're on the Parks and Rec? Oops, wrong one. Thanks.
Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas trees reduce erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and Whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas Sparks is recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation, now therefore, Gino Martini, Mayor of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim May 24th, 2010, Arbor Day in the city of Sparks, and urge all residents to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands and to support our community's forestry program.
Go ahead, Stan.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the proclamation. It's really important, I think, to our community to raise the awareness of maintaining a healthy urban forest program and a forestry program. So we really appreciate it, and we'll work hard to maintain what we have.
It's always a good ceremony. Mr. Schmidt and I were there with, Stan was also there, and the kids, the young gentleman that's, and I forgot his name now.
Jesse?
Jesse, yeah, that explains to the kids about the dirt and the water and the air and all that stuff, and it's really a nice little presentation, and I think it goes a long way, and the kids love it. They get to grab a handful of dirt and throw in the tree, so it's a good thing.
It is a good thing, and we rotate elementary schools throughout the
Yeah.
city, so we get around to everyone and try to get the kids thinking about a tree a little more than they may.
Right, and this one was also for Arbor Day, but it was also for one of their school teachers that was there that had been there 25 years that recently passed away. It was in her honor, too.
That's right. It
So-
doubled as a memorial
Yeah.
tree.
So, thanks, Dan.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Okay, next is 4.2, commendation to Jennifer Harp, victim advocate. Welcome, Jennifer. Welcome, Steve. How are you? I'm going to go ahead and read the commendation. Whereas Jennifer Harp has been a victim advocate with the Sparks Police Department since May 2008, and whereas Jennifer's dedication, strong work ethic, and commitment to the victims of crime and abuse she serves are appreciated not only by her clients and coworkers, but by the community at large. And whereas Jennifer's compassion, sensitivity, and concern for the victims she works with are a valuable asset to the Sparks Police Department and the city of Sparks. And whereas because of the exemplary job Jennifer has done as victim advocate, she was recently honored with a 2010 Bringing Respect and Honor to Victims Outstanding Advocate Award by the Alliance for Victims' Rights. Now therefore, I, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, join with the City Council in commending Jennifer Harp for her commitment to her job and her compassion for the victims in our community she serves on a daily basis. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
I just want to thank you so much for supporting this position. I am dedicated to our community because of the things that our community has to deal with every single day. I feel that they deserve that. During these economic times, it would be very easy to forget about victim services, and I want you to know that it is definitely valued and it's on my mind all the time. So I appreciate this commendation. I also want to remind you and welcome you on Thursday at 5:30 at the Marina. We will be remembering victims of crime, Holly Quick and also Malachi Dean. Unfortunately, these were two children who lost their lives to homicide. We have a beautiful butterfly, but we're adding on to that thanks to the Alliance for Victims' Rights, Crisis Call Center, Home Depot, and the City of Sparks. So thank you so much for supporting that.
Holly, exactly. Jennifer, where exactly is the memorial?
It's a butterfly memorial. It's over on the Western Village Casino side. So if
Okay.
you're walking over that, you can park in that casino parking lot and get right there.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks for all you do. I appreciate it. People
Thank you.
forget about what happens to victims after crimes happen, so we appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, next is presentation, Sparks Fire Department Project Safe Residential Smoke Alarm Program. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to come and give you an update on our Project Safe residential smoke alarm program. If you remember back in 2006, we had a pretty devastating fire in the city of Sparks where 2 teenage girls lost their lives in the fire. During our investigation, we found that the house didn't have really sufficient smoke detectors that probably could have saved their lives if they were installed. So at that time, the city manager had asked us to put together a residential smoke alarm program of some type for the community to make the community aware of what type of smoke alarms they should have in their houses, where they should be, how do you use them, the whole bit. So we did. We spent a while putting together a program. We did some research on other cities throughout the United States and found a really good educational program and put it together in 2007. And with that program, we went out to the community through media, newspaper, TV stations, the radio, and we just did a big blitz on educating the community on smoke alarms. And it worked very well. We had a lot of comments come back from that. Our second part of it that we wanted to do was an installation program. We wanted to be able to go out and help the low-income families that couldn't afford to purchase smoke alarms, be able to get smoke alarms and install them in their houses, and the older homes in the city of Sparks where they may only have one smoke alarm or none at all, and get them installed. At that time, that's when kind of the economy started going down, the budget took a hit, and we had to kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit. But with that, we thought, well, the only way we're going to be able to do this program, which is still a very good program, is to try to go out and get a grant to do it. So Inspector Peltier did that. She went through the Homeland Security and successfully wrote a grant and obtained over $32,000 in money for this installation program. And in that program, we're able to purchase smoke alarms, batteries, installation equipment, flyers, pamphlets, just a whole bunch of stuff to do this. So now she is our project coordinator for this program, and we're advancing in it right as we speak. So we'd like to be able to just give you a real brief presentation on what we're doing for the community and how we're proceeding. I'll ask Michelle to do that.
Thank you. As Chief King said, we're really excited to be on the installation portion of this program. Our goal is to reduce injury, to reduce loss of life from fire by actually installing smoke detectors and by educating the residents about fire safety in their homes. Our homes are where we feel the safest, yet that's where 8 out of every 10 fire deaths happen in our homes. Why are we doing this? Because 70% of those home fire deaths result from fires in homes that do not have smoke alarms or do not have working smoke alarms. Now, during the first year of Project Safe, our initial target area will be 250 homes. We're going to directly reach about 750 residents this way. In that red circled area that you see on the map, that is the area of Sparks that has the highest number of fire-related calls, so we chose to start there. It's off East Prater and Sullivan, almost all the way over to El Rancho. This is our identified most vulnerable population to fire-related incidents. The homes are older, so the smoke detectors are older. They also may or may not be installed in every level of the home or in the sleeping areas. 80% or more of the homes that are in that darker shaded area in the map are qualified as low to middle income, so they're least likely to have their own resources. This is Ward number 2, Councilman Salerno, this is your area. We conducted a door-to-door informal risk survey of this particular community, and we did find that most of the homes have a smoke detector, at least one. However, 7 out of 10 of those existing smoke detectors do not work. In addition to that, about half of those existing detectors are over 10 years old. Now, part of our Project Safe education program is to help let people know what we've just recently in the last 4 years started finding out in the fire service. Once smoke detectors get to be 10 years old or older, 55% of the time they will not detect a fire. When you push that little button, it may beep and you may think it'll work, but 55% of the time, if they're 10 years old or older, they will not detect the fire. And every year thereafter, that percent of time decreases.
Michelle, I
So,
think we have a question. Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Michelle, thank you for the statistics. That's quite startling. How many of these units are apartment complexes?
we will not be installing in any apartment complexes. We will target mobile homes. We will target rental homes as well, but not apartment complexes, because that's one of the things we do with our fire and life safety target hazard program.
And do we have statistics on the apartment complexes, on what they're doing?
When we do fire inspections, we actually require them to change out any smoke detectors that are 10 years old or older. And we check a certain percentage on a random sampling to make sure. Plus, we encourage them to keep a log of when they check their smoke detectors. Anytime they have any work order, tenant move-ins, move-outs, we strongly encourage them to change those out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? 94% of the homes that we've targeted do not have smoke detectors in each bedroom or sleeping area, which is very important. And 40% of the occupants of these homes have experienced a fire incident of some sort. Our goal, again, is to reduce injury and loss of life. In order to provide the smoke alarms and to educate the residents properly, we have several different components that are coming into play. We will be installing 10-year smoke detectors in the sleeping areas, hallways, and on each floor level of the homes that we target. If we find smoke detectors already there that are less than 2 years old, we'll put in 10-year batteries so they don't have to be changed out. We'll also be installing strobe and bed shaker alarm kits for the hearing impaired, and we'll be working on fire safety education. Well, of course, we'll evaluate our program so that we know how to do it better in years to come, because we want to continue it, and also so that we can track the good that it's done. So for our first objective, which is installing the smoke alarms in each sleeping area, hallway, and on each floor level of those 250 homes, on 6 days from now until March, 6 different teams will visit that initial target area. We'll start with mailers and door hangers. People can call Fire Prevention Bureau of Sparks to schedule the installations, and then our teams will go out on the scheduled dates. We will have a fire safety educator who is a fire department person as the team leader. We'll also have main installer, an assistant, and/or translator as needed. That's one of the questions we'll be asking when people call in to register. And each volunteer will have an identification card on a lanyard and a T-shirt. The T-shirt has Project Safe logo on the front and Sparks Fire Department volunteer on the back. Of course, they get to keep those souvenirs. This is a process, as Chief King said, that has been initiated successfully in several cities across the United States. What we've done is we've tried to take the best of the best and things that will work in this area and meet our needs. So we have waivers in place, we have scripted guides and procedures so that we stay consistent throughout, regardless of which team is going to which home. Volunteers who have expressed interest in helping us out are the Sparks Rotary, the Northern Nevada Home Builders Association, Boy Scouts, and we can now add Girl Scouts to that too. Objective 2, again, is to place 10-year lithium batteries in any detectors that are less than 2 years old. We don't need to replace those. And we have grant funding for 250 batteries. For the hearing impaired who may or may not wake up to the traditional smoke alarms, we will be installing strobe and bed shaker kits. They meet or exceed ADA requirements, and they work through transmitters. They are wireless. They send a signal from the actual smoke detector to the bed shaker unit and from the smoke detector to the strobe.
Michelle, we have another question. Mr. Smith?
You just answered it. I was wondering if they just detect the fire in the room with a bed shaker, but it comes from a signal. Okay.
It does. It can even go through walls within a certain amount of feet.
Thank you.
Sure. Again, we'll be concentrating not just on smoke alarm install, but on teaching people to be proactive in their own homes. With fire safety education, we'll be doing a personalized home fire safety check and providing fire safety kits. Our fire department personnel will be the team lead and the fire safety educator on each particular team. We'll encourage them to check smoke alarms, practice a home escape plan, make sure they know 2 ways out of every bedroom. Does the family have a meeting place? It's also important that they realize that children and anything that will burn has to be kept 3 feet from any heating or cooking sources. We'll address any visible electrical concerns and encourage them to modify those. And of course, encourage them to keep matches and lighters out of reach of children. Every household is going to receive their own personalized home safety checklist, also an escape plan diagram that is long-lasting for the refrigerator. We have to have badge stickers for the children. That's always important for the fire department. We are giving them a smoke detector awareness DVD that was developed here in Sparks as part of Project SAFE. It features the Sparks Fire Department and local residents. And they'll get a guide sheet on smoke detector awareness, escape plans, and it also includes a note on the importance of residential fire sprinklers. These are developed for the literacy challenge. So about 70% of our population can't read a trifold brochure. So we took that into account when we developed these, and everything will be available in Spanish too. And lastly, we want to evaluate the program. It will be a program we hope to continue year after year and to expand. And we'll be tracking how much good it's done, what the results are in the participating neighborhoods. From each home, we'll keep a copy of that completed home safety checklist so we know what the issues were. We'll also keep data on the number of smoke detectors we've put in, the number of hearing disabled devices that we've installed, and then track the number of adults, kids, and people over 55. We're using proven methods that save lives. A working smoke detector doubles survival chances in a fire. Smoke detectors 10 years old or older have to be replaced. As far as education, we're using nationally recognized methods that teach smart, proactive choices. And the cost benefit is very valid. $1 spent on smoke alarms saves $69 in fire-related costs. With the current state of the economy, there's never been a more important time for us to go out and do this. People are focused on immediate survival. Where's the money for food coming from tomorrow? Where's the money coming from to pay our utility bill for tomorrow? They're not really thinking about maintaining those life safety systems or taking the initiative to seek safety education. More and more people are cutting corners, resulting in a higher number of fire-related and other calls. We're seeing impromptu heating and electrical uses. We're cramming more people into smaller places, focusing less on maintenance. Some areas of the United States are tracking increased incidents that are caused by the stress of the bad economy. Increased alcohol, cigarette, domestic disturbance, and arson-related fires are being tracked. We don't have those statistics available to us yet, but we're seeing it in the increased calls that we're receiving. So there's never been a more important time for us to go out and start this program. And Fire Marshal King is going to talk a little bit about how we're going to continue it after the grant funding runs out this year.
Can we get the overhead now, please?
Take some technology.
Okay, we have one more program that we're doing just to help raise funds for this Project SAFE, and that we've been working on our first annual Project SAFE golf fundraiser to raise funds, more funds for this program so we can continue it for the next year. We are going to try to obtain another grant. That is part of our process too. But in the meantime, we are putting together this golf fundraiser. It is on June 26th at DeAndrea Golf Course. It's probably one of the least expensive golf tournaments that you'll play in during the year, but it definitely will raise good funds for this tournament, and every penny that's raised through it goes directly into the pot to purchase more smoke alarms and batteries and fire safety paraphernalia for the fundraiser. So we just wanted to get that out there as well to show that there's another avenue that we're trying to pursue for fundraising.
I see at the bottom there it says opportunities for sponsorship. Why don't you push that up a little bit, Bob?
He's more than happy to.
We already have received a few of these platinum level sponsorships where for $600, a platinum level sponsorship gives you a 4-person team, hole sponsorship on one of the holes, their name on our banner at the tournament as well as on our website. We do have this information on the fire department website under www.sparksfire.com, Everything is there, including all the information about Project Safe. So you can go there and read all about Project Safe. In fact, you can even view the video that Michelle was talking about that we made for this program as well.
Questions, Mr. Solero?
You know, I think what you'll find in Ward 2, being I represented it so many years, a lot of the reason that there isn't smoke detectors is because you have so many absentee landlords that just rent the homes out. And that's another reason why there's a real low voter base in that ward, is because the people are here today and gone tomorrow. And these landlords, a lot of them live out of state, and as long as they get their check for rent, that's about all they care. And this is all related, because if you look at the area too, it's run down. A lot of the yards and stuff is because nobody's there overseeing these homes that the actual owners own, because they don't live here, or, you know. So I think you'll find a lot of that is just for the simple fact that somebody moves in, most of the time they don't stay a long time anyway, and they're not going to go out and pay for smoke detectors. But just a side note, you'll probably find a lot of that when you canvass that area over there.
Yeah, we did during the survey, and that's even more the reason for us to get out there and try to get smoke detectors in those houses.
It's good. I think it's a great program. I think it's going to be very helpful to the community and also to the fire department.
Great, thank you.
Cut down a lot of their calls.
Okay, any other questions? Bob, Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Should I take this presentation? Here we go.
Okay, let's move on to the consent items, 5.1 through 5.3. Anybody want to pull a consent item? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Salerno.
Move to approve the agenda items, consent items 5.1 through 5.3, as outlined by staff.
Do I have a second? Mr. Schmidt.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Salerno, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve the consent items as outlined. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, general business items, presentation, discussion, and possible direction or approval of federal, state, Nevada League of Cities, and local legislative affairs issues. Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, Steve Driscoll, Assistant City Manager for the record. This is the monthly update that we do, view related to your government affairs processes. Kind of give you a feeling for what's been going on and what's going to be going on. I think right now from the staff report, we highlighted a couple of things specifically. Tomorrow night, the Charter Committee at 5 o'clock in this room has invited each of you to participate in a discussion, two main topics, one being ward elections. It was brought up in the last session of whether or not that should be changed, and so your Charter Committee, as their liaison, what they're looking for you to do and why they invited you was just to have a conversation with you to see what your thoughts were, whether or not that wants to do any change, and whether or not that'll be something that we would defend if someone wanted to make a change and you didn't. The second topic of conversation was all the non-chartered cities in the state and 10 of the 12 chartered cities in the state. The mayor is a member of the council and a voting member with that. Ours, we are not with what we have in ours. And so they wanted to just have a discussion with you as to what your thoughts are about possibly changing our structure to match those other 17 cities. So with that, again, that'll be tomorrow night, 5 o'clock in this room. Interim committees are still meeting, are predominant. There's lots of conversations. A couple that are getting a lot of conversation are SB 264, which is eventually dealing with consolidation and business challenges that we're having, and the ACIR committee is dealing with some of those same topics, including home rule. So they continue on. They're wrapping up their regular meetings and getting to having their final meeting, which is a work session for both of those. The SB 264 will be June 23rd down in Las Vegas, but it will be telecast up in Carson City if anyone's interested to be watching that. We're really kind of getting to the point where they're deciding BDRs or not, and if so, what BDRs will go. Each of those groups have multiple BDRs to deal with multiple topics if they so choose. The next thing that we have, when we talk about BDRs, we as a city get one BDR that we can sponsor ourselves without going to other legislators to deal with topics. Your charter committee, if they were to do something, typically does not use the city's BDR. They usually try to find someone to sponsor that, one of the other state elected officials. And in this case, what you folks typically do will start now and kind of think amongst yourselves as to things that you might want to bring forward as a BDR. And then we discuss those in the next couple of meetings, and anything that you decide that you want to bring forward would then be put into formal writing and submitted to the Legislative Council Bureau no later than September 1st of this year. So this is kind of the first call, if you will, for you folks to start thinking about any topics that you would like to have. And what we can do with that is you can either forward them to the Government Affairs function and we can kind of catalog those and bring them up for discussion, or we can do like a mini work session when we have several ideas and we get ourselves into, I would think no later than somewhere in July, we should bring those together for open comment from the dais and action from the council. We're also in the processes of working on the Assembly Bill 494 legislation, which requires us to submit a report to the Legislative Council Bureau by the September timeframe related to consolidation, both our thoughts on it as well as any discussion or studies that have been done. We chose to do our own report. Reno and Washoe County are doing a shared report. And the reason we chose ours was there was a white paper presented to the council back in November of 2008, and that really answered a majority of the questions, not all, but a majority of the questions. And so staff is currently working on those. We've cut and pasted the white paper, if you will, into the various sections, and now your staff is working on answering the remainder of those questions. Most of those will be looking at consolidation or efficiency possibilities and things that have been officially studied or can be done and unofficially studied. So we're working on that. Our goal is to have the paperwork from our side done by mid-June so that we can have you folks take a look at where you are and provide any other direction, kind of like the last meeting in June, if possible, no later than the middle of July, so we can have that finished by September.
Got a question, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, on the charter stuff, another item that I think it needs to be looked at and start talking about is our planning commissioners and all the requirements that they have as far as meetings and things that they are required to do. One example right now is that we're required to have a planning commission meeting every month, whether we have an agenda item or not. So I believe now in the last few months, we've had 2 meetings where they've taken roll call and dismissed a meeting, and that cost us several $1,000s to do that, both in their monthly stipends and everything else like that, so, or their meeting stipends. So if we can start taking a look at what the requirements for planning commission that no longer apply because we don't need to have them that often.
We can bring that up
Appreciate it.
in the meeting on tomorrow afternoon, because while they've kind of bridged their topics, if you will, this would be something that would not have been on their radar, so we can bring it to their attention. And
That's not a charter item.
I'm sorry?
That's not a charter item.
Okay.
That's a BDR item.
Oh, BDR item. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's a charter wouldn't be concerned with this. They have no
Okay.
legal
I'm
jurisdiction.
sorry, I
over that.
misunderstood. So
That's all right.
we'll just
I might have
start
said it
that on
wrong.
the list, and we can go forward from there.
Thank you. Yeah, legislator sets it, is because I asked the question several months ago when I saw this meeting being posted, and basically it was call to order, public comment, adjournment, and I asked, why are we doing this? You know, why are we spending all this staff time, and we pay them, I believe it's $80 a meeting for every commissioner, it's $80 a meeting, so right there you got $640 just in stipends, or what do we have, seven, so, you know, I mean, we got $560 just in stipends to go ahead and take and pay them, plus staff times, plus noticing, plus all the other stuff that needs to be done, SynCat, you know, for the commercial, and yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that we're mandated to do those types of things and just to spend money.
One of the things, Mr. Smith, Steve Driscoll, again for the record, we can take a look at what was done in the interim, because there were some exemptions given to the county, and we could see if there's any possibility that we could stretch that to us as far as hours of operations or some of the changes they did. I'm not sure with this board where to go, but we'll take a look. If not, then the EDR would be your next possible step.
And I don't think it needs to stop there. I mean, they're required a certain amount of training each year, are we, how does that now fit into the new realm where we don't have a lot of master plans and stuff going on? Those are just a couple items I can think of. I know they're pretty restrictive of what legislation puts on them. Gives it time to maybe back up a little bit and say, we're spending a lot of money here that we really don't have.
Well, this will be the first one on the list. We'll get the list started for you for your open discussion later.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Adams.
And thank you, Councilman Schmidt. Stirred my feeble brain here. We also have the same situation going on with the Civil Service Commission, although not the same as dramatic fiscal impact, but we do have a commission that was created by charter that has to meet, and now they're being required to meet, although there may not be anything for them to meet on.
Yeah, we can open that up to any committee on out there that has requirements, NRS or charter related, because I think charter can handle that item as far as civil service, can't they? Or is that NRS also?
No, that would be charter, sir.
Okay. We'll open up to any of our boards and commissions we have that have restraints on that says what we have to do with them.
The notes I made is all boards and commissions, so.
Thanks.
Look at operations. Thank you.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, real quick, has there been any talk about, well, first of all, going back to what the Charter Committee was talking about with the mayor voting rights, have they also said, along with that, to add an extra council person or take an extra council person away so that there'd be an odd number? Have they had any discussion on that?
No, sir. And that's part of the invitation, was to gather your thoughts as the elected body, if you will, to see. They were mainly looking at it from a standpoint that it had been discussed in the past. And then in my presentations to them on behalf of the committee, sharing some of the things that we did on home rule and charter cities versus incorporated cities, they found it interesting that in all the incorporated cities, that's the structure that's dictated by the state, is that the mayor is a member, an elected member of the body and votes, and that 10 of the 12 chartered cities also did that. So they felt that it was worthy of a conversation and a debate, and they were hoping that you would share your thoughts with them, and those are the types of details that would come out, because at this point, it's been topic and invitation only, no discussion.
Okay, because, 2 years ago when this came up, I think we had a pretty good discussion on this one and also voting by ward. And I think some of the people on the Charter Committee wanted to do it, some of the people didn't, some of the people on this council wanted to do it, some didn't. Was there any thought of putting it on the general election as an advisory question to see what the voters think about it?
Again, sir, no discussion at this point. It was brought up as a topic for discussion, and those were the kinds of things they were hoping that the council would, kind of throw out as part of the discussion tomorrow night at 5 o'clock.
Okay, thanks.
Continue on with federal. Pretty much at this point in time, we've done the annual discussion. The budget has been moving on or not moving on as far as that goes. We continue to get updates from Anya Graves, who's our contract lobbyist, as to the things that are going on and specifically how they affect us. And so and also we continue to meet with the local staffs of the federal delegation on at least quarterly, and then when possible, whenever the actual members of Congress are in town, and they want to put it on their schedule, they do meet with us. We've had a couple of meetings with Mr. Heller, and one of those things that is on it's not really on the agenda at this point, but it's, what day? On June 4th, next Friday, Senator Ensign, thank you, is going to be in town and asked to take a look at the Johnson Center again, especially now with its solar panels. So he's tentatively has it on his schedule that he's going to be at the Johnson Center. And so as we know more, or if he cancels for some reason, we'll know that. So we'll provide information as it gets closer to that date. So with that, I think that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions?
Did I miss anyone?
I can see we have so many senators.
You might be getting a phone call, but that's all right.
Anyway. All right, thank you very much.
Good job, Steve. Okay, next, 6.2, consideration and possible approval of the Lake Tahoe Regional Fire Chiefs Association amended and restated fire and emergency mutual aid agreement. Mr. Freebolt, Chief.
Good afternoon, members of the council. Frank Prevost, Division Chief Operations, filling in for Chief Falk. He's away at the Fire Academy. The item before you is consideration and possible approval of the Lake Tahoe Regional Fire Chiefs Mutual Aid Agreement. This was last done in '96. The original one was 1974, amended again in 1986, and most recently 1996. Essentially, the aid agreements, we have several of these. They allow us to quickly mobilize resources in times of emergency. Lake Tahoe Regional Chiefs is primarily for wildfire, although it is all risk. The real benefits there is it does allow us to surge capacity resources for the city of Sparks, and then also for the city of Sparks for other people in the region. The billing arrangement is for 24 hours without expectation, although that can happen under certain federal reimbursements. Some of the weaknesses may be that we're kind of on the periphery of that area. There's a map attached. Also in the winter months, it's questionable what kind of resources we could get down off the lake. I wouldn't want to be driving a fire engine too fast off some of those grades. Also, the Lake Tahoe Regional Chiefs Association is an outstanding network in terms of best practices, legislative support, training, et cetera, just dissemination of information. Primary changes this year had to do with recognition of some different billing practices, which we've used successfully in some of our other agreements, recognition of the compact, supplemental interstate compact for emergency mutual assistance between Nevada and California. We see those overall as a positive. This agreement, like others, typically has a multi-year agreement that will come before you, and then we'll have an annual operating plan that allows for minor adjustments from year to year.
Questions? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, this is no different in theory of what we've been doing for 30 years now, correct?
Yes, sir.
We've been participating in this, and do you see any reason, other than the possible depletion of funds that we don't have in the budget anymore, the downside to this?
No, we have in all of our contracts the ability to deny a mutual aid request if we feel that it draws down our own resources too far for our city's consideration.
And so we have that ability, if a call comes in and say, we're financially strapped, we can't do it.
Yes, and we have monitoring tools available financially to us where we keep on a pay period by pay period basis what our drawdown is in those funds.
And I'm trying to find on here the length of time that this current contract, you say this comes in front of us every year?
No, sir. We have a suite of mutual aid agreements. They're typically 3 to 5 years in length, so that we're not coming before the council every year with, I think I have roughly 15 different mutual aid agreements. So we'll administer minor changes from year to year through an annual operating plan. It will adjust things like minor changes in pay rates, maybe radio communications frequencies. There might be changes in command and control structures. Occasionally there'll be jurisdictional boundary changes, but all fairly minor.
And so this particular contract, you're asking us to go for how long? Because I can't find that in here.
Pull that up on the agreement.
I apologize if I'm looking at the wrong exhibit.
I believe this one goes through till... One more time here.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one having that problem.
No, sir.
I'm trying to locate it
I
then.
apologize. Should be right in there.
Hate to put you on the spot there.
Oh, I'm used to it. Mr. Driscoll's not the only person who forgets things. It's usually on the signature page. As you'll see on that signature page, it has so many participants, approximately 20, that each of the agencies go through and have to sign that individually, and then those are all accumulated.
Chief, why don't you just get back to us on that, to how long we are looking at? I have no problem with a
I apologize. It's usually-
three-year to
it's usually
5-year agreement.
5 years.
I just don't remember ever seeing this come in front of the council before.
I have another one. You'll see 2 items down from Nevada Division of Forestry. That will go through until, I believe, 2014. It's
Okay.
every 5 years. I apologize. I will get that to you shortly.
That's all right. And my last question, and this is more basically for information of the public and stuff to make sure that, the item we're going to be talking about today with the standards of coverage study and the consolidation issues and everything else like that, this is in no way connected, even though it's on the same agenda, it's not connected to it.
No, sir. The 3 items that I have are 2 mutual aid agreements with different agencies. As I said, we have a suite of those agreements, 13, 14 of those. The standards cover item is unconnected to those.
Yeah, it would be very easy for somebody to take a look and say, we just did a consolidation of 24 fire departments around the lake because we have an agreement in place with them, but it's nothing even remotely close associated with one another. It just happens to be on the same agenda today.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Thanks. I saw it somewhere. It's on ours, it's on page 72, paragraph 7, and it says the agreement stays in effect until the EMAC is amended.
That's probably off the supplemental interstate compact.
Is that a different one?
Yes, sir. What that is the Emergency Mutual Assistance Compact was a federal document, but it requires a declaration of emergency before you can invoke it. The governors of Nevada and California wanted to have the flexibility to provide interstate assistance without that level of declaration, so that supplemental compact is in effect until the federal one changes. I will get you that date, I apologize.
Ms. Ratty?
I'm just going to take one more shot on it. Page 73, the Exhibit D, 2010 Operations Plan. The operations plan will be effective January 1st, 2010, and will continue in effect until replaced.
If it's in the annual operations plan, that may not get it either. It's typically 3 to 5 years.
We'll let you get back to us.
I will get it to you.
That's an exhibit to the contract for the operations.
And then I say we vote on it for 20 years.
Exactly.
Controls the amendment. But you can get it to us. I mean, as long as it's within the 3 to 5 year range, I'm okay with it. I just want to make sure we have some beginning and end dates to work with.
Right, and should you have any trouble with it, all the mutual aid agreements have a clause for you to review and pull away from.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, if not, looking for a motion. Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we choose to approve the 2010 Lake Tahoe Regional Fire Chief Association's amended and restated fire and emergency mutual aid agreement.
Mr. Smith?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve the mutual aid agreement as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, item 6.3 is consideration of and possible approval of the Sparks Fire Department Standards of Coverage Study.
Members of the council, Frank Freehold, Division Chief Operations, acting for Chief Locke. The item before you is 6.3. This involves a recommendation really brought to us from the county for Sparks to conduct a Standards of Cover report. At that request, we submitted a staff report to the city manager. He has, as you can see, added an additional one to that. And from Washoe County, I have Kurt Lattipow here to present the details of what that Standards of Cover would represent.
Okay. Please state your name for the record, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. City Manager, Kurt Lattipow, Fire Services Coordinator for Washoe County. If I could take just a couple of minutes to give you a real brief overview of how we got here today, and then try to share a little bit about where we may be headed. The Joint Fire Advisory Board, which is made up of members of the City of Reno City Council and the Truckee Meadows Board of Fire Commissioners, who the County Commission sits as that board, started meeting rather aggressively in March to discuss the possible changes, extension, or termination of the interlocal agreement that drives the relationship that Truckee Meadows has with Reno. Approximately a year prior to those meetings initiating, the county, Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, and Sierra Fire Protection District, which are all three governed by the County Commission, embarked on a rather aggressive master planning process, of which one of the mandatory components was a standalone standard of cover for each of the agencies that were governed by the Commission. Those have been completed. They were accepted by the Commission in February, and those standards of cover studies now exist. Recommendations out of the master plan have been presented in the newspaper to some extent, related to potential regionalization, or at least discussions of regionalization and economy of scale. As we were working through the Joint Fire Advisory Board process, by the way, one of the other recommendations of that master plan was that Reno conduct a standard of cover. At the time we launched the project, the master planning project, the previous administration of Reno declined to engage other than on behalf of Truckee Meadows. So the recommendation was that Reno conduct a standard of cover so we would have a good look at Reno, Truckee Meadows, Sierra, and the county. For those of you who aren't aware, there is actually an area of the county that does not lie within an incorporated city or within an organized fire protection district. It's commonly referred to as north of Township 22 line. The most populous areas include Gerlach Empire area and Red Rock. So those areas actually fall under the county's general fund. So the recommendation was made that Reno enter into an SOC, and in fact that ended up being a condition of the extension, the one-year extension, to give notice as to whether or not to renew or discontinue the relationship between Truckee Meadows and Reno. During the Joint Fire Advisory Board meetings, Councilmember Ayazi recommended that consideration be given to approaching the City of Sparks to see if they would like to participate and take advantage of economy of scale of doing simultaneous standard of cover, as well as the next step, which would be a regional standard of cover. At the April 13th County Commission meeting, we were convened as the County Commission, the Truckee Meadows Board of Fire Commissioners, and the Sierra Board of Fire Commissioners. Staff was given direction to, in fact, approach the City of Sparks and see if they would be interested, and the rest, as they say, is history as I sit here before you. The recommendation that we are making is that Sparks consider doing a comprehensive standard of cover analysis, and that further, without obligation of any consideration of a consolidation or regionalization, that you consider participating the regional standard of cover. The way this would lay out is if you were to engage, if you were to approve Chief Locke's recommendation, your standard of cover would run simultaneously, the process would run simultaneously with the City of Reno's, thereby the economy of scale. The consultants are already here, they're already in the community, they're already engaging the stakeholders in the process and resulting in limiting their trips, limiting their expenses. Once those studies are done, and to some degree simultaneously per the scope of work, the consultants would be looking at all the other documents that are out there, the standards of cover from the other agencies and any other studies that may come up. And then they would bring forward recommendations for, out of the regional standard of cover, recommendations for performance criteria tied to level of service. The way this scope of work is now laid out, that once the governing bodies, if all the governing bodies are participating in the standard of cover, once the governing bodies were to agree on a performance measure, then phase 4 of the regional standard of cover is actually a 12-month analysis of how we're doing, basically. Once the governing bodies agree on a regional objective, then Phase 4 is every quarter, the consultants would give us a report as to how we're doing, how the performance objectives that have been set by the elected bodies are being met or not being met, and recommendations for consideration of adjustment. I do not have anything in the scope of work that asks them to make a recommendation on regionalization whatsoever. However, we do believe that in looking at it, staff believes that in looking at it in this perspective, that you get a real good look at all the automatic and mutual aid agreements that are in place. Are we getting maximum utilization regardless of governance? Are we getting maximum utilization as to the placement of our fire stations, the staffing of those units, and the boundaries that those units currently are adhering to? And with the automatic aid agreements, the boundaries have already been dropped to some extent. I'm prepared to try to answer any questions you may have. I would only like to add that this isn't something that staff cooked up. There's actually a document out of the Center for Public Safety Excellence that drives the consultant as they move forward in doing the analysis. And the developers of this document included representatives from the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the City and County Managers Association. So it's a fairly well-read document, and it will guide these consultants as will our scope of service, guide the consultants as they work through the project. We have an extremely aggressive timeline for these consultants. Should the City of Sparks agree that they'd like to move ahead with this project, either with the SOC and hopefully with the SOC and participating in the regional analysis, their results will be on deck no later than the end of November.
Questions? Ms. Kerrigan?
Just a real quick question. How by doing this would this help out the citizens that live here in Sparks?
And I'll give you my opinion.
Sure, that's what I'm asking for.
In my opinion, this will benefit the citizens of Sparks by validating your current levels of service, your current investment, your current locations, and validating what staff has created as far as a risk assessment. And when they do the risk assessment, it's not just a fire risk assessment, it's also a non-fire risk assessment. It also has a piece in here to take a look at the EMS delivery system and the dispatch system. For me, it's a check and balance. When I go before the board, I think it's important that I have something in my pocket that I can assure them that what we're investing in the Truckee Meadows Reno contract, as an example, is well worth the investment. And I believe this is what you get out of the standards of cover. You also will end up with a document that uses existing information and more to help in planning the future. And for me, as a long-time fire professional, I always like to try to look down the road.
Okay, so what you basically told me is that it's going to cost the citizens $18,000, so somebody could tell us that our fire department is doing a good job of what they're doing right now.
Or make recommendations for improvements.
Okay, so you're saying the outside agency could come in and say to our fire department, you need to do something differently.
They make
and I'm not trying to be argumentative,
Yeah, no,
but you see, we're our own entity over here.
Sure.
We're doing pretty good with what we've got. $18,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money to everybody, but it is to us, because the fire department would have to pay for it. They're always talking about their hoses are too old. That'd be $18,000 for some new hoses. I just don't see the benefit of it right now. Now, if it was strictly an EMS, if you talked about EMS.
It's a component.
I wish that would have been the whole study, because that was something I could sink my teeth into, because I think we have a problem on the way that we do this in the entire county. So I could sink my teeth into that one, okay?
Several of us could, sir.
Yeah, instead of the fire part of it.
Yeah.
Because, we're, like I said, we're our own entity over here, and we're doing pretty darn good, I think, as far as the coverage goes. And I had a question later on about, it said some of our resources are, I think that was written before, there was something in here that said we were down on our resources, and I don't think that's true anymore, right? The staff report, I'll find it, and I'll ask you in a second. Thanks.
Oh, yes, those were, that had to do with some of the analysis regarding one of the potential values behind it is it allows us to do what-if analysis.
Yeah, And right under that line, it said, what if, it says our resources are down in the city? And I think that was written before the budget was done. Is that correct? I'll find it.
Timeline may have been, yeah, I'm aware of the area you're talking about.
Okay.
And if I might, this is not a consultant coming in and telling your staff. It's a team of consultants coming in and working with your staff and other stakeholders in the community, such as members of the council, to gather information and do an analysis and make recommendations. And there are several key bullet points out of the guidance document that they follow, but in no way do they come in and dictate to your staff.
Would the county willing to pay for that, for Sparks?
We're willing to extend the opportunity to enjoy the economy of scale of a simultaneous study.
That's a no.
Ms. Ratty?
A question for you, Chief Revelt. We do master planning in a lot of different areas of the city. Is this something that we would eventually get to on our own as the city of Sparks, as part of a comprehensive planning process for the fire department?
Yes, one of the comments in the staff report is that we've really collected a lot of the data that you would use in this as well. I wouldn't say that we have a stated, defined standard of cover, if you will. But we have done a lot of that work in master planning. Those things are taken into consideration. We use them right now in our business plan. You know, it sets our benchmarks, performance levels, as we present it to all of you in terms of operational impacts of budgets that we were looking at. We pointed to that business plan and those, you know, those goals that we had hit and which ones would be in jeopardy, which ones wouldn't.
Okay, and then if you could, I echo Councilman Kerrigan's interest in the EMS portion of this work, especially since I'm the lucky person getting to work on some of that. What portion of this study would be, like, can you say from like a percentage standpoint, how much of it would be focused on the EMS work?
In all honesty, I can't say from a percentage standpoint. I can share with you, because it has to, for everything to fit, they need to parallel a similar approach that was used to the other SOCs. And because a portion of the response obviously is heavily weighted to EMS, in the other SOCs and in the master plan, I would say there's probably a fifth of the document that's dedicated. And as a matter of fact, and I'm working on the action plan to implement the master plan recommendations if adopted. There are several recommendations tied directly to EMS in that master plan, none the least of which is the consultants have recommended that we do a comprehensive analysis of the entire EMS delivery system, inclusive of all the components, which is fire, REMSA, and whomever else.
And dispatch centers.
And absolutely, one of the strong recommendations right out of the gate in the dispatch theme is that the PSAPs, the primary PSAPs, adopt as soon as possible the EMD process rather than kicking it to
Sorry,
secondary.
EMD?
Emergency medical dispatch, which is the prioritization system that the dispatchers go through to determine the level of response and how many people respond. Right now, it's going from the primary PSAP over to REMSA to do that work. It's actually a transfer, which is contrary to recommendations even from the author of the program that the EMD is built on.
And then I guess my last question is, do you have any sense of if we were to do this on our own without the economy of scale, what it would cost, or?
I do, because I went to bid on this a while back. And back to the economy of scale, and because the department has a lot of the baseline information, and in talking with the consultants, that's how we've got it down to a time and materials not to exceed a certain amount. A comprehensive standard of cover analysis from scratch is anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 for a community of this size. If we were not to do this concurrently with the one we have going on, I would venture to say it would be at least $50,000.
Thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's assume that we don't go forward with this, and you go forward with Reno and Washoe County to do their master plan analysis. Doesn't the city of Sparks and de facto go ahead and gain from that? And reason why I'm saying is that, one of the big issues that I think we've had trouble in gathering our arms around as far as the other three entities is what their true cost of doing business is. And after you get finished with this study, you're going to know what the true cost for Reno and Washoe County service that they're going to have. And then we can say, look, our service level is comparable, it's not comparable, our cost is comparable, cheaper, more expensive. I mean, we'll have those benchmarks once you're finished with it, and then we can use those benchmarks to see where we're at.
You will, obviously, it's a public document, it's publicly funded. The cost per se of the operation is not the meat of the analysis. What you won't have is the full picture. You'll have an analysis, a comprehensive analysis of the service around your borders.
Right.
And to some degree, the consultants are going to need to look at the automatic aid agreements and how deep into Sparks you come. There was actually a question that was asked of me during one of the Joint Fire Advisory Board meetings. Well, why don't we just request Sparks information under Freedom of Information Act? Well, that's a poor way, in my opinion, of doing these kinds of studies, because the best way to do it is to have the data come in a certain manner and have a willing partner. But we will have to look at the periphery and the overlap of the automatic aid. So you will have some benefit from that analysis.
And I'm sure there's going to be questions you're going to be asking, Station 5 and is it 17?
17.
Those two stations, I'm sure you're going to ask all the questions, how far 5 goes to, into the county, and how far 17 comes into the city for calls.
We will be taking a look at the automatic aid agreements, but not necessarily the operation of your physical plant, such as unit utilization and placement of the different types of apparatus.
And I guess my real problem with this is that, we're 10 years, the great consolidation of Reno and Washoe County Fire Department. And I know consolidation now has been backtracked and say it's not a consolidation, it's an agreement between the two. So we're using the word to fit the scale of what we want. 10 years after it's done, and all this theory with no backup document of how much money it saved the residents of Washoe County, we're now looking at service levels. We're now looking at services of coverage, and I think that should have probably been done in year one with consolidation. And the reason why you're here with this standards of coverage contract to go forward is two guerrillas are fighting. Two guerrillas are in trouble. They're beating it out on each other. My daddy told me when I was a kid that if you're watching two guerrillas fight, stand back, smile, and take pictures, and when they're all finished, you can go see what the fight was all about. I don't see the sense in jumping into the middle of this thing. Is let you guys duke it out, get your standards of coverage, and we'll take a look at it when the report's finished and say, hey, you got some pretty good stuff here. Let's talk about this. Or, hey, we're exceeding all these in different categories. I'm not sure we want to spend any money to do it. And I guess my last question is, where does staff sit on this? Because there is no recommendation from staff to report that I can find. I find three possible motions, but I don't find a recommendation.
This one's a unique agenda item for me. We originally provided a staff report from the fire department. Through the review process, city manager chose to amend it. I think that's what you see on the first page. And then we were advised that would, when I checked Monday, they were on here together. I can address our piece of it. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, I just want to know what the staff is saying, whether they want to go forward with this because you're giving up the money. I mean,
the city manager's recommendation was that you do provide an opportunity for the fire department to be heard on the basis of the scope of work, and Mr. Ladapow was requested to make this presentation, but I have provided your recommendation that we not move forward with this study at this time.
Did it work?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry.
Mr. Salerno.
Was the Washoe County District Board of Health Director, was she included in any of this process, since they are the ones that administer the interlocal agreement with the emergency medical services pretty much.
No, and the reason for that is this was a master plan and a standard to cover the fire service and those EMS services provided by the fire service.
Just the EMS services by the fire, not
Right.
in general, the whole.
No, that would be a lengthy and expensive analysis. We look forward to moving ahead with that recommendation to the board, and I have submitted, we actually had a representative of Dr. Anderson as we worked through the development of the action plan, and they had input into the action plan.
But isn't it spelled out in the interlocal agreement of what our local fire department's role is in the EMS? That's why I was wondering.
I can't speak to that interlocal agreement. I manage the interlocal agreement between Truckee Meadows and Reno. I can't speak to the health department's interlocal agreement. However, REMSA has no authority. Their franchise does not include any services provided by the fire department. As an example, the Sierra Fire Protection District has paramedics on their fire engines. REMSA has no say over that, nor does that interlocal agreement affect that.
Councilman Salerno, if you'll restate the question, I think I can take a run at it.
I just wondered if the Washoe County Health Department was included in any of this background research on pertaining to the EMS side of it. Because you were mentioning earlier about the EMS, there's parts of it that are included in this.
I'm not sure about the scope of work Mr. Lattipouse discussed today. In terms of the interlocal agreement, that defines the combining of Sparks, Reno, and Washoe County to form the
Right,
District Board of Health.
right.
There were 2 ambulance services studies that recommended local fire services be an integral part, kind of a 2-tier part to the regional EMS design. And
Mhm.
I think that's the system we have today. But I don't believe that's defined in the interlocal agreement.
Okay, that's fine.
Ms. Ratty?
You know, I think there's a piece of me that thinks, and I fully understand where my fellow council members are coming from with their comments about not wanting to get into the middle of the consolidation discussion. At the same time, I do think that there's some information in here that I would find of value as a council member trying to make policy decisions. I think, however, given the economic climate and where I am struggling is, even though it is only 17.5, spending money on a study right now, even a valuable study, and I guess that's what I want to say, is I do believe it's a valuable study and has some potential good information for us, but it's the timing for us is not particularly right. Yes, it is a value, but it's still 17.5 that we have to come up with someplace, and I don't see where we would come up with that money, so that's my challenge here. But I do, I think, I hope for a time when, in all of our departments, that we can begin to reinvest again in some planning work that will help us think through our long-term situation as a city, because I think a lot of things have changed in terms of our resources available, in terms of, what's happening in terms of our population, and those master planning efforts are helpful.
I'm in agreement with what Councilman Ratty and Councilman Schmidt said. I don't think we need to do this either. We're going to get the benefit of the study anyway. And the other thing is, I think no matter what it says or what you say or whatever who says, it's all has to do with consolidation when it all comes down to the last part of it, and I'm not in favor of that. If the contract between Reno and Washoe County was such a great thing, I think they would have approved it again for 10 years without doing so many studies and putting it off and all that. They keep talking about we saved 25 million and they saved 12.5 million, but nobody's shown me those numbers. All it is talk. So I'm not in favor of this either. Any further questions? Looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
Move to accept the report and recommendations of the Washoe County Fire Services Coordinator and Sparks Fire Chief, but not move forward with this study.
Do we have a second? Mr. Kerrigan.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Kerrigan to accept the recommendations but not move forward with the study. Is that correct?
Yes.
Everyone understand the motion? Any further discussion? All in favor, please vote, or all please vote. Even if you're not in favor, don't vote. Okay, we have a vote. Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
6.4, consideration and possible approval of a Nevada Division of Forestry mutual aid contract.
2014, I'm sorry. Frank Freebolt, Division Chief Operations, filling in for Chief Flock. The item before you is for a mutual aid contract renewal with the Nevada Division of Forestry. This would expire on July 31, 2010, and the current one would go through June 30, 2014. Essentially, this has many of the same elements. Excuse me. Primary differences are that we've tried to standardize our mutual aid agreements where we'd had, I think, one time we'd had as few as 2 hours with one agreement for free services, maximum is 24. Where possible, we've tried to pull those down to about 12 hours to kind of manage our risk. We have a few that are still 24. This one essentially is actually an increase in hours from 4, but it was statewide to 12 hours with 2 small geographic areas, essentially an area down the canyon and an area adjacent to Carson City. Beyond that, the balance of the state would be assistance for hire, no free time. We also gain the access to Division of Forestry hand crews and aircraft for 24 hours. Those represent a significant financial cost if we had to employ those. And so staff feels that overall it's a good balance approval in this agreement. Again, this would go through 2014. Minor adjustments such as annual billing rates, operational issues, radio frequencies, maybe jurisdictional boundaries would be handled in the annual operating plans each year. Strengths essentially allows us to surge capacity to the city of Sparks at no cost for 12 to 24 hours depending on the asset. One of the weaknesses, if you get a lot of wildfires at once, is typically Nevada. You've all been here a long time. Those generally roll up from the south if it happens that way, and so all the resources get thrown there. If we had immediate needs here, we might be a little bit behind the curve, but typically all the resources follow the activities it rolls north. So over the years, we've done well with that. We've had no trouble collecting any of our reimbursable fees previously with NDF. And the only threat, again, as with Lake Tahoe Regional Chiefs or any of those, is that if we have a large number of unreimbursable mutual aid requests that could draw down on our resources, we do track that on a pay period by pay period basis, and we have the option always to make sure that we don't deplete our own resources too far.
Okay, questions for Chief Freebolt? Okay, if not, looking for a motion. Ms. Ratty?
Move to approve the 2010 Nevada Division of Forestry mutual aid contract.
Do you have a second? Mr. Salerno?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Salerno to approve the agreement. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Chief. Good job.
Chief, what was all that smoke the other day?
Pardon me?
All that smoke the other day?
It was a
I think
fire.
Saturday. Where was that?
Out west of town.
West of town.
We've had a few people get started on burning leaves from time to time.
No, it was quite, it filled up the valley.
Controlled burn from Tahoe.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yeah, there was quite a bit that blew over the other day.
Okay, so I think it was Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, 6.5, presentation, discussion, and possible direction on the draft of a Charter 5A Connected City of the Sparks Comprehensive Plan. Welcome, Karen. How are you? It is.
Good afternoon. Today I wanted to do a workshop on Chapter 5, which is Connected City. I'm Karen Melby, and I'm Senior Planner. Whoops, I hit the mic instead of... Today we are going to be discussing Chapter 5, which is a Connected City. This is the third chapter of the 5 chapters that you will be reviewing in a workshop of the Comprehensive Plan. As part of writing this chapter, I have been meeting with Public Works and also the Parks Department to work out the mapping and the goals and policies of this chapter. I wanted today to have this workshop to get your input on the premise of this chapter. There are 2 figures also in this chapter, or maps. The one is the classifications of the streets would be such as arterials, collectors, etc. And we're basing that on the NDOT standards. And then the other map would be on the trails. So what is the premise? The premise of this chapter, or what is a connected city? A connected city focuses on moving of people and providing connections between uses, not just the moving of the vehicles. The transportation system functions as an integrated system. This allows residents to travel within the community in a variety of ways which are safe and efficient. This chapter introduces the policy and implements the practice of complete streets. It is a movement that is sweeping the country. This movement is born out of the need for transportation change over the last 2 decades. Too many years, our transportation network was built for the automobile alone, leaving the pedestrians without sidewalks, streets, and crossings. In this chapter, we're covering transportation network, the TOD corridor and transit, pedestrian and regional trails, the complete street concept, connectivity, walkable communities, and multimodal transportation system. So what is a complete street? In 2003, the term complete street was coined. A complete street is safe, accessible, and convenient for all users, regardless of the transportation mode, age or physical agility or abilities. Complete streets provide for bicyclists, pedestrians, transit riders, and motorists. Victorian Avenue, east of Pyramid, is an example of this, which was just recently completed. A complete street provides narrower motorized vehicle lanes. It has connectivity between the links of uses. It classifies the street by function and adjacent land uses. It's effective and has efficient lighting. It has aesthetic elements such as landscaping, public art, etc. It also has streetscape design elements, which are raised medians, pedestrian refuge islands, bike lanes, bus pull-out areas, transit shelters, wide shoulders, plenty of crossing opportunities, raised sidewalks, audible pedestrian signals, and street furniture. In this chapter, there are 4 proposed goals for a connected city, which is what I want to focus our discussion on today. There are also 2 goals from the TOD and 1 from the West Pyramid Plan. The first goal, Goal CC1, fosters the concept of moving people. The movement of people is the premise of this chapter, a connected city. Goal CC1 sets the groundwork for future circulation decisions to consider the transportation of people and not just the moving of vehicles from one point to another. The goal's intent is to change the decision-making so that all users of the streets are considered when planning, designing, building, and operating the roadways. The policies for this goal look at the complete street concept, making streets safe, accessible, and convenient for all users. These policies state that the city will adopt principles of the complete street. These policies are intended to have the design of streets consider all the users and integrate the pedestrian and bikes. Public Works has suggested that we revise the policies, which I've done, adding policy CC 1.4 to address selecting of the routes that would be considered complete streets and connections, and not all roads would be intended to be improved to the complete street standards. Goal CC2 is to promote design that integrates multimodal transportation system.
It's me.
Hold on, Mr. Schmidt has a question.
Karen,
Then
sorry.
Yes, no problem.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there on that. I was trying to get back when you were talking about these different streets and Public Works putting in the goals and everything else like that, and how that relates to your maps. I don't see any maps submitted. Are these maps done?
Yes, I have them at the end of my presentation.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. I was
problem.
looking for them in a file, I couldn't find them.
Yeah, they're the last couple slides.
Ms. Ratty?
I'm just curious on the complete street concept, because I agree with Public Works that targeting specific streets to make them complete streets makes a lot of sense, and is part of that conversation, working with the other, RTC and of course the other jurisdictions on where those connections are made. I only bring it up because one of the frustrations I've had with RTC is that they haven't moved forward on a master plan for cyclists that makes some of those arterials work, and those arterials need to go, from across jurisdictions. So are our maps integrated with what the community as a whole is doing?
That's the intent. We hope to be able to do that, and actually, one of the policies does relate to that we work with the other entities and hopefully get their cooperation on this concept. And I know that RTC is moving more and more towards that. I have been participating on the pedestrian safety and action plan, and so one of the things that we have been targeting is those kind of uses, and also we are starting, RTC is about to start work on a bike plan.
Right.
And also I'll be working with the RTC on that bike plan.
My understanding is John Erickson is one of the members of the Technical Advisory Committee for that plan. So that's really my question, is sort of about timing. Will our planning process be flexible enough to accommodate that planning process and vice versa, so that we end up with connectivity at the end?
Yes, that's
Okay.
the.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Smith?
In fact, the RTC in our last retreat, which was in January, we talked about the complete street process, and we are moving towards that. I mean, when we show design, we show happy people with the dog crossing the street and trees and shrubs. We can supply everything except for the people walking across the street, so.
Right.
And I think we are moving in that direction, and you can see Victorian Avenue is a classic example.
Well, and also the proposed improvements or Vista, what they're proposing on Vista, we will have a bike link, a pedestrian link there, which has been in dire need to get some connections out to Wingfield and to other parts of our trail system.
We are going to connect the marina with Nichols Avenue and onto Victorian also.
Yes.
With the bike lane.
Yeah, and then the other big link that we need is a connection coming from the marina down to the bike trail along the river. That's one that I've been working with Stan on, where we want to propose that one. That's another big link that I think is important to get, that we need to prioritize too.
Maybe we can put it in with a North Truckee drain. Ms. Ratty?
And I think those are all great examples of what's going on in Sparks. And when we did our ride on last Monday, the question was, we've done such great work on Victorian, not just the piece west of Pyramid, but there's that great bike lane that goes all the way past Rail City. And so that got the two councilmen from Reno talking about what could they do on 4th Street, so that then became an arterial where you could go east-west, not just through Sparks, but all the way through Reno as well. And so that's my question, is the connectivity between regions. And I do think RTC is getting some momentum on this, and that's great. And timing-wise, I'm just hoping that we can make it all work out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, so I think I read this goal, if I remember. Sorry. But the transportation system needs to facilitate efficient travel while promoting a variety of motorized and non-motorized modes. The goal CC2 calls for the city to develop an integrated multimodal transportation system. The goal differs from CC1 in that it's intended to change the construction and implementation process, where goal CC1 is more of the planning stage. This is more intended to go towards the construction and implementation stage. The policies for this goal encourage the street patterns that make streets more pedestrian-friendly, dedication of right-of-way to accommodate multimodal streets, and prioritize the street improvements. Public Works wants to identify the types of transportation that would be by street and establish street standards to fit that street type. This would then be linked to the CIP. Right now, the street improvements are either straight rehab. In the CIP, you generally tend to be straight rehab or just pavement repairs. And so we're trying to look at maybe broadening that. The intent is to identify the streets that would be improved to accommodate the multimodal versus would-be streets that would just be vehicular movement. And goal CC3 is to coordinate land uses and circulate decisions to promote the use of alternative modes. The intent of this goal, CC3, is to encourage the coordination between transportation agencies and other departments within the city for the promotion of alternative transportation systems. Coordination would ensure that all modes of transportation are considered when designing and improving the transportation system or network. The policies for goal CC3 state that the importance of working with the region and the state agencies to make sure that the city has a part in the design of those roadway improvements. As for the land development, the city would promote rail use, industrial uses along the tracks, and review all new development should integrate the circulation patterns with the surrounding area, encourage alternative modes of transportation. The fourth goal, CC4, is to develop a citywide multi-use pathway system. This goal emphasizes the importance of a citywide connected multi-use pathway or network. In order to complete the pathway, an inventory must be done and improvements prioritized.
Question again, Councilman.
Yeah.
Have we had that goal before?
Not directly in our current adopted plan, no.
Okay, thank you.
The policies for this goal, CC4, encourage the expansion of our trail system, identifying the gaps within the system, and placing more emphasis on improving that trail network throughout the city. As part of this chapter, this is our map that we're proposing for the trails and pathway map. The trails and pathway are in addition to the sidewalks and also bike lanes being the lane that's connected to your street. We are not going to map those. We decided that if we mapped all the sidewalks and all those bike lanes, it would be too cluttered on the map. So we're showing on this map, the blue lines are our regional trails, the purple lines are pedestrian paths, and unimproved trails are green lines on this map. If they're dashed, they are proposed. If they're a solid line, they're an existing trail. The regional trails are defined as a concrete 10-foot trail, or it also serves as a regional connection. The river trail is not concrete, but it does serve as a regional connection. So we've shown that as blue. The pedestrian trails vary in width and surface from asphalt to DG. The unimproved trails are more like your hiking trails. So what we decided was to classify them into 3 types of classifications. We went around and around on how to classify because there are a variety of trails out there. But this is what we're proposing for the trail map. And we would have the link all the way going out through the East Truckee Canyon. But in order to make this legible, we just put it going out there. The East Truckee area plan will show the trail all the way out.
Question, Mr. Schmidt.
Karen, I know you said you'd make it easier, and I know I'm getting old, my eyesight. Is there any way I could get a large copy, I can see that map? Because
Sure.
I can't
Yeah.
read anything on it, I can't read anything. I would appreciate it, so I see where
Yeah.
all these proposed, the ones we have and where we proposed to do. Appreciate it.
Do you want 11 by 17, or would you like a larger format?
Just something we can read.
Okay,
mean,
I can get
it's-
that. Does everybody else like a copy? Okay.
I don't know about anybody else, but I can't. I've got an idea where Pembroke Highway is on the plan, but after that.
River, I got the river down.
Got the river. Thank you, Mr.
No problem.
No, that's better.
This is the draft map for the street classifications, and we are using the NDOT classifications. One of the suggestions that John Erickson had was that if we use the NDOT classifications, we may have the eligibility for more funding to improve our streets. So we decided to use the NDOT classifications, because we did map this with the RTC classifications, and then John decided that he'd rather see the NDOT. So we have remapped this map. We've done this map, I think, 3 times. The blue on the map is the interstate highway. The red is other principal arterials, and the green is the minor arterials, and yellow are collector streets. Then the other streets are your local streets, and we weren't going to classify those. And this is a draft map. John Erickson in Public Works is still looking at this map.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Karen, I can't see it very well, but is that, Vista stops and becomes from a major arterial feeder?
Yes, it does. When we did
Shouldn't that be red all the way
foothills-
out, now that it's 4 lanes all the way out there?
It's going to that traffic signal at, was that Wingfield Hills?
Wingfield
or-
Hills?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the improvements also for
Right.
the RTC are going to be stopping, so that's where,
So it'll be red all the way to there, right?
that's something I need to get from John Erickson, yeah, if we're going to change that classification. This is the classification on the NDOT maps, which,
Yeah, well, that's because it's from where it stops right there.
Yeah.
They're just now doing it to 4 lanes.
because the other thing you'll notice too, this map does not show Los Altos or Disc Drive between Sparks Boulevard and Pyramid Highway. And those are also ones that I'm waiting to get, what John wants to classify those also. Because I know those would have to be some kind of arterial or collector or something.
Okay.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Karen, now, once you've identified and you've labeled the streets what you have, do you have a set of standards at each one of those? Like a set of standards for majors, set of standards for minors, set of standards for arterial? Do you have, is that in the works also, or is it just whatever we decide you can put there?
When you say standards, are you mean for the street improvements or? I'm not
Right,
sure.
and I'm thinking mainly the Victorian completion was just there, you know, where would that type of standard be put at? Where could we expect that for improvements for now on, that type of improvement, where, is it red, green? What should we expect? And
Well,
then
public-
what other levels of improvements would be after that? I mean, are we talking just striping a bike lane? Is that okay in anywhere that's red, that that's an acceptable improvement?
We're still working on that, but Public Works does have a manual that does define what those streets improvements would be. But we are going to be doing, as one of the policies that, was it 1.4, I believe, CC 1.4 policy, that we would be mapping what would be your complete streets, and that would do a classification of what type of pathway or whatever would be along those streets.
Because I think, you know, and thanks to Councilman Smith, you know, one of the best complete streets, I guess if you want to call it that, but one of the best improvements, street improvements we've had in the city of Sparks is the one on Victorian Avenue that just got completed. It's the most, you know, appeasing to the eye, you know, to the users of the street. I haven't received one complaint about it yet, and I think that knowing where that standard's going to go, you know, what level of traffic does that standard go to, you know, that helps me a lot, so I know where we plan on, you know, putting that type of thing, and where can we start funneling money to do those types of improvements.
Our intent at this point, and maybe you as a council can give us a direction on this, but their intent was, under that policy, CC 1.4, was that after we adopt the comp plan, then we would go back and identify which streets would be complete streets. But if it's the council's pleasure that they would like to see that mapping done as part of the comprehensive plan, I can work with Public Works and we can incorporate that into the comp plan right now if that's what the council would like to see. I don't know.
I'm not sure what all that entails, so I don't want to say I want to do that or put staff on the hook.
Well, it would
I would
be,
just like to see what we're talking about, examples of, you know, when we're looking for a major street, this is the type of example of improvements we're looking for, you know, and yeah, call it out. I mean, I think as we're developing the plan, call it out. You know, if we're going to do a major one, this is what we're looking for. You know, if we're going to do a minor or a green or something, then this is the type of level of thing we're looking for. So later on, we get down the road and say, well, you know, somebody says, I'm going to do a striping of a bike lane, that's probably not an acceptable standard to go to.
if that's what we're tending not
If
to have
that's
along that street.
that area, correct.
So it sounds to me like the council would like to have that type of classification as part of our comp plan. Is that a correct interpretation?
You know, if it's not going to cause undue stress or time, or going to drag this out for another 3 years.
No, I don't see it being that big. I think what we need to do as staff is sit down and look at the map and basically take this as a base map, and then we say what type of street, classified by street. And I've actually, quite honestly, I took a street map and started thinking about for myself what I would do it.
Okay.
But yeah, we can add that to the comp planner, if that's the desire of the council.
Okay, Ms. Ratty?
I think we pretty much have gotten there, because that was going to be my question, is how does the complete street concept overlay with this map? Because, for example, I'm going to take Pyramid Highway. The complete street concept doesn't necessarily work on Pyramid Highway, so I don't think you could line up, every major arterial, everything that's drawn red is going to be a complete street. In that specific situation, the goal might be to have a complete street more on 4th Street to make the other modes that aren't vehicles more comfortable in that environment, and the vehicles more comfortable on Pyramid. I mean, so I think it's not necessarily that certain standards line up with certain kinds of streets, but that there's a comprehensive system that creates connections for all types of users going everywhere that we need to go. So I would be really interested in seeing where we would, again, with the mayor's comments in mind, that we don't make it so complicated that we can't do it, but that, and again, then I think that lines up with the trail plan, it lines up with the RTC Bike Master Plan, so that it makes sense for non-vehicle transportation as much as it does for vehicle transportation.
Yeah, when I met with Wayne Seidel and Pete Etchart, that was one of the things we did talk about, was like, that we couldn't classify every street as an arterial as complete or something, because you do have example of, like, Pyramid Highway. Personally, I don't see that being a complete street. I don't think you want pedestrians along that street.
So you have to create an arterial for cyclists or pedestrians that does work along the same.
And I know when I met with Pete made a comment that he was hesitant to, like on Prater Avenue, maybe we take one of the streets north or south of Prater, and that becomes the complete street and not Prater. However, we do have an issue that is the bus route. So we will have to look at, because that's one of the things that when we do the complete street map, we would need to look at where the bus route's out and consider that, I think, too. That's an important facet, because if it's a bus route, people are going to be walking. So I think we have to incorporate that as a consideration, too.
Right, and particularly in the older part of the cities, I would assume that we're going to have to make some compromises, as in this street will be great for pedestrians and cars, but bikes are out, and this street will be great for, because the streets are already built, and we're not going to do major changes to that infrastructure. Thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't want to, I think we're on the right path here, but I just want to give an example where Pyramid Highway would be considered a bike or a complete street, as the new design calls that to be 6-lane freeway with 4 2-lane feeders on each side. Am I correct? That still is a design for anybody who's been involved in that project. So having our policies in place, or our desires at the street, I mean, a feeder road can very easily turn into the complete street concept, because it is less traffic is designed for the version, less off-ramps, those types of things. So, I think we're there. I mean, I think we understand what we want, but just, leave, the details, that there could be the chance where, if that went to that direction, that we could have that incorporated plan. And we got to give something to Mr. Smith when it comes time to RTC to be making these designs and stuff, that he kind of knows where we're going to with everything.
Right.
Ms. Ratty, let's move on.
Yeah, but that brings up one more question for me. So is there an opportunity for phasing? I mean, we talk about that when this street is, and we just did all this work on Pyramid, and it's the reason that we did a chunk of it was pedestrian safety. Right. So it made it a better pedestrian environment. And in looking at those plans with Mr. Erickson during that process, it was a conscious decision that it would not be a bike-friendly environment on the narrow part of Pyramid in the older part of town. So, but I completely understand Mr. Schmidt's point, that down the line, as that road is improved, as that road is expanded, then it would possibly be a great place to do that. And so, is there any thought on how you address phasing like that?
I haven't talked with Wayne Seidel, but my feeling is we wouldn't do phasing in the comp plan. The phasing would come more in a different document, like maybe the CIP. We would prioritize it through the CIP and not the comprehensive plan. It was I haven't, like I said, I haven't run that one by Wayne, but that's my
Mr. Carey?
feeling.
I think to that point, one of the things that comes with this section of our master plan is we get long-term policy direction to mold our future CIP, to look to accomplish this plan. And if you were in Sparks 20 years ago and compared it to today, you would really find that there's been a revolution in the extension of bike lanes and bike paths and sidewalks. We just got the last piece of sidewalk along Pyramid Way, and, back in the 70s, I walked along that road in the dirt. But, I think that this gives us a very systematic approach. When we're working with RTC, when we're working with NDOT, we have a set of policies, we run through those, and I think it'll accentuate the positives that we can, such as we just did on Victorian Avenue, where we narrowed a street, took out an unnecessarily wide street, to create the focus on the pedestrians and the bikeways. And I think that's what this overall connection does. And Complete Streets, I think, lives with us in our CIP, and it gives the council that opportunity. In terms of standards, those are something we absolutely need to get down and into a system that we follow, particularly for development review. We've been using a good set of RTC street standards for impact fees, and obviously we'll have to make some changes to that. But I think this is a good roadmap with policy statements that'll challenge us to be able to say 20 years from today, we made a difference with this plan.
Okay, Karen, can you move on?
Yep, I think. I just wanted to give you an update. In February, I had a community workshop on the latest draft of the land use plan, which is Chapter 3, a balanced land use pattern, and the latest reversion of the land use plan, which we've converted the plan development categories to city land use categories. We've added the TOD categories to the land use map. There are no overlaps now in the residential land use categories or densities, and we've added 2 new residential land use categories. There will be 14 land use categories and 6 TOD categories for a total of 20, which means we're reducing it from the existing 70 categories that we have in our master plan right now, our land use map now, down to 20. I've also written draft chapters, all except for the last chapter, which is Chapter 7, Concurrency and Development. That's my next chapter to tackle. I'm working with the other departments in the city to finalize the livable city, and then also starting to work on the concurrency and development. Based on how it goes with working with the other departments and getting response back for them, this is my tentative future schedule on council workshops. I hope to have in July of this year, Chapter 4, which is a livable city, before you. And then in August would be Chapter 7, concurrency and development. September, I'm hoping to have the whole comp plan going to the Planning Commission for adoption, and then in October, we come to City Council, and then November to regional planning. It's my hope of hopes that we can make that schedule. And the last slide, I just want to remind you and also the public that I am keeping up the website and the maps that I presented today, and also the written chapter is posted on our website under living and the Sparks plan. So you can check that, and I also have been trying to keep a news section under that to keep people up to date on where we're at, what's happening. I will be having a community workshop on Wednesday afternoon on this chapter to get some input from the community. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks for your input.
Okay, Karen, what do you need from us? Sounds like you're going down the right path, and you've got direction, I think, from us up here. Anything else that you need, or any council person need to add anything as far as direction or anything?
No, I don't. I just wanted to talk about it with you guys and make sure that you're comfortable with the concept of the complete streets.
Okay, so we don't need a motion or anything?
No, I don't see any
Okay.
need.
So you've gotten, you think, direction?
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Anyone else with direction? It's Karen? Okay. Thanks, Karen.
Yep, thank
Nice
you for
report.
your input.
Looks like it's going well, really.
I think so.
It's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, next is 6.6. Are we going to need so we need a motion to adjourn after redevelopment? Okay.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, it's moved by Councilman Kerrigan, seconded by Councilman Smith to have a closed-door session after the completion of the redevelopment agency meeting. Any discussion? Any questions? Seeing no questions, please vote. Passed unanimously. Okay, comments from the council or city manager? Oops. Yeah, well, I should have never done that. Ms. Ratty?
I would like to ask the city manager to approach the county about the early voting polling places. And in receiving my sample ballot, it appears that there's only one early voting place in Sparks and no early voting places in the older part of Sparks. I've got it right here. And there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 locations in all, and only one of those locations is in Sparks. And so I would like to understand their methodology for choosing early voting locations, and I am particularly concerned that the only one in Sparks is out on Disk, which if you have transportation challenges, that could make it difficult for you to participate in early voting. I know there's nothing we can do about it for this round, but I'd like to make sure for the general election that the people of Sparks have more opportunities for early voting locations if we can do that, or if there's, just understand what they're thinking.
That's money.
Okay, Mr. Carey.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I have an announcement regarding boards and commissions.
Not an announcement.
The city of Sparks has several committees and commissions who has vacancies, which we would like the public to consider applying for. The first is the Civil Service Commission. There is one appointment for a 3-year term. Next is the Advisory Committee for the Disabled. There are 2 appointments, and these are for 1-year terms. And finally, we have the Parks and Recreation Commission, which has 2 appointments for a 4-year term. Persons interested in serving on these committees are invited to submit an application using our community service application, which is available from our city clerk's office, and you may also apply online using our website, which is again www.cityofsparks.us. Simply click on the governing portion of our webpage and then click to boards and commissions and get involved. On the Get Involved section, you will find a place to click on our community service applications. The City of Sparks will be accepting applications until the close of business on Tuesday, June 1st, 2010. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing no further business, we're adjourned.
Call the order redevelopment agency meeting of Monday, May 24th with a roll call, please.
Chairman Smith.
Here.
Agency Secretary Brooks present. Agency members Ratty. Here. Salerno.
Here.
Martini.
Here.
Carrigan.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Chief Administrative Officer Carey.
Here.
Agency Attorney Adams.
Here.
Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. I do not have any cards. Would anybody like to speak at this time? See no speakers, we'll bring it back to the agency. Looking for approval of the agenda, or if you'd like to take things out of order.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 3, recommendation to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of May the 10th, 2010. Would anybody like to?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Reports of claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of April 8th, 2010 through May 5th, 2010.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Any comments from the agency and chief administrative officer? Okay, then we are adjourned.